What's going on, YouTube? RDAP Dan, Federal Prison Time Consulting here. Today is Thursday. Hope you guys are all having an amazing day. Today we're going to touch base once again, on prison reform and the issues surrounding the First Step Act and a lot of the confusion that's taking place right now, specifically around the good time credit of supposedly what's supposed to be the 54 days per year, which is the 85%. So we're going to talk about that today. We'll give you guys a few minutes to join us. What's going on, Kevin? Welcome, my man. Hope you're having a great week. It's been a struggle for a lot of you that have family members sitting inside federal prison right now that were told once this bill was enacted that thousands of inmates were probably going to be released almost immediately. And as of now, I think it's been, one person that's been released, Matthew Charles. And that really didn't have as much to do with the 54 days good time as it did some other provisions that took place through the First Step Act when it comes to the crack cocaine law. So there was a lot of other issues there on why he was released so fast. However, they have turned him into a poster child for the First Step Act. You're seeing his picture, videos everywhere, and there really is a lot more behind that. So we're getting so many emails from people right now through core links that are like, hey, why is this guy getting out and we haven't been released yet? What's going on, Jay? Welcome, man. Glad you could join. So that's what we're going to talk about today a little bit. And it's either going to be next week or the week after. We're going to have some amazing guests on that are definitely experts in this whole field and arena surrounding prison reform, specifically talking about the First Step Act, Second Chance. I know a lot of you have questions. Can the First Step Act, the Second Chance Act, RDAP, all of these different abilities, good time credit, can they be applied together? So we're going to talk about that today too a little bit, because we've gotten so many emails over the last, really it's been like the last month. It's just been kind of nutty how many emails that we've received, and we want to create some content and kind of share it and put it out there with everybody. And then we'll have some newsletters that are going out to all of our core links followers, so we can kind of try to set the playing field a little even for everybody. So one of the first things we know the Prison Reform Act, First Step Act was passed. We know that there's a risk assessment tool that needs to be created. They have about 6 more weeks or so to create the risk assessment, or 6 more months, to create the risk assessment tool. Now, the risk assessment tool is designed for specific things like additional, not good time credit. There's a difference between your good time credit of like your 54 days a year, because that's actually time that you do not have to serve. And then you have a lot of your programming credits and your pre-release credits. That's considered time that you're still going to be in BOP custody, but it can be done in a combination of like the federal halfway house, home confinement, things like that. So the risk assessment tool is being designed to determine what types of programs the BOP is going to implement, whether it's their own programs, third-party programs, purchasing programs, adopting programs. Once that's laid out across the BOP nationwide, then they have a certain amount of time to implement it. Now, a lot of people are asking, once those program credits and once those classes are released, what they're going to be, are they going to be retroactive? The answer is going to be no, because there's nothing in place yet. Nobody's taking these classes to be retroactive. So the only thing that's really going to be retroactive that we're discussing today is the good time credit, the 54 days. Now, Congress supposedly had in mind that when they released this bill and it went into play, that this was supposed to take place immediately. That's why they were talking about possibly thousands of inmates coming home before the holidays that have been locked up for years, that these extra few days a year really make a difference. So it went from 47 days to 54 days. The problem is people are still in prison. They don't know what to do. They're being told all different types of scenarios and reasonings behind it. We've even had we've even had individuals that have as one as far as to file motions within the court. And basically the BOP is stating that Congress made a mistake when they implemented this plan, and they put in there that the good time credit, it's not going to be affected or going to go into effect until the risk assessment tool has been created, which could take up to another 6-7 months. That wasn't the idea that Congress had laid out. Now they're asking them to go in and make the provisions, make the updates to this bill, And so far, there's been nothing put in place where they're actually going to do this. Some individuals have even stated that, no, this was the original intent, that it wasn't intended to release people right away. So the balance that we have to look at right now is if it was intended to go into place right away, there's people right now that have technically served their time and they're still sitting in prison beyond their release date if the good time was actually updated. So I know a lot of you are freaking out about that. Family members, there's really not much that you're going to be able to do about it. And this is one of the things that we spoke about, months ago when we were talking about when this bill, if this bill was going to pass, is there's going to be a lot of watered down versions of it. There's going to be a lot of hiccups, a lot of headaches, and it's still better than what was going on prior. There's still, at least it's an incentive to do something, but we're not really seeing much progress from this other than people like Matthew Charles, which is amazing. He got released like basically the day after. But what about everybody else? So that's what we're trying to focus on. So if they do make you guys wait, if you've got loved ones in prison right now that should be released, you're going to have to wait probably another 6-7 months. That's just going to be the way it's going to be until this risk assessment tool is completely created. And then you're talking about other things like additional pre-release credits towards halfway house, home confinement, and that's what we're going to focus on here today. Tamara, Cut 50 and others are working on, I reached out to Cut 50 today. Tomorrow I reached out to, actually a lot of the information in here I got was from Cut 50. They are working on it, but my opinion is the verbiage in the writing is gonna stop them probably dead in their tracks until the risk assessment tool. By the time they get something done and in place to really redo anything, it's probably going to take several months anyway. So by the time the risk assessment tool is created, then the good time credit, the 54 days a year will go into effect and you'll see people released immediately. Now, the really cool thing about this bill, if it works the way it's supposed to and the BOP actually implements a lot of the programming and implements the incentives, all of these programs are incentive-based. So the big thing is for, the people that are probably going to be affected the most by this or take advantage the most of this are going to be nonviolent offenders, white-collar individuals, low custody individuals, camp custody, out custody, because what's going to happen is for every 30 days of programming once they decide what that is through the risk assessment tool, once they decide what the programming is, for every 30 days, technically you're able to get up to 15 days towards pre-release credit. Now, this can be in addition to things like RDAP and second chance. So RDAP, you already know if you qualify for RDAP and you get the full benefit of RDAP, you can have a year reduced off of your sentence, depending on the length of time that you're sentenced to, or actually depending on the length of time left on your sentence when you enter into the program. Whether it's between 24 or 37 months or more, you can get up to a full year off of your sentence. Then you can also qualify for Second Chance Act, which best case scenario for Second Chance Act, you can also receive 12 months of federal halfway house or combination of halfway house and home confinement. Now with the First Step Act and the pre-release credits, in addition to that, you can also get an additional between 10 and 15 days per 30 days of programming in pre-release, halfway house or home confinement. So now you can actually see more than 12 months federal halfway house or home confinement. On a long sentence, you can actually start seeing people knock off, a couple of years. It really can make a huge impact. And one of the things, we actually got an email from a guy yesterday who's waiting for sentence. And he's asking, should we try to prolong my sentence or try to, once I do get sentenced, ask for a pushed out self-surrender date? And the reason why he's asking that is because he would like to get to prison once this has already been implemented so he can start doing the programming right away and get those credits for the first 30 to 60 days he's there. To me, that's a great idea. If you have the ability of pushing out your sentencing, your attorney can file a motion. After sentencing, if you have a surrender date, your attorney can ask for additional time to surrender. You just have to give them a good reason. And if you're going to use this for a reason, just make a good argument as to, this bill has already been passed. You would like to take full advantage of it and not sit in prison when you can't take advantage of it if possible. So yes, it is possible that you could extend your stay at home before you get into the prison system in order to benefit full effect of the First Step Act. The problem is we should all kind of expect things to happen slow. So far, we haven't seen anything go super smooth within the BOP. Everything takes time. When they made the 2-point reduction on the drug law for the nonviolent drug offenders, what was it, 2014 or 15, they gave a 2-point reduction off of the guidelines. And that took a while to implement. That took a while for people to see effect. I think it was a year after it took effect that anybody actually saw any actual benefit from that, meaning going home sooner or going to a halfway house sooner. So it's progress. The First Step Act is really just what it sounds. It's a first step in a better direction. And it was on, let's see here. And if you look in the description of this video, we've got a lot. I actually copied and pasted a lot of the information that I found. And I also put a link in the front of the description of the video that gives you a link of where I resourced all of this information from. But so on December 22nd, just one day after First Step Act was signed, Virik Shah, a federal prisoner in Chicago, tested the theory. He filed a habeas corpus petition in federal court seeking his immediate release from confinement because of the new rule, good time credits. But in early January, U.S. District Judge Sharon Johnson Coleman denied his request, saying that the law did not actually allow for his release until a later date. Technically, she wrote in her decision, the First Step Act stipulates these extra credits can't be doled out to inmates until after the Justice Department develops a risk and needs assessment program, a process that could take more than 7 months according to a deadline that notes were laid out in the law. So that was her interpretation of it. A lot, you have right in there, advocacy groups quickly shot back the risk assessment. The argue is specifically intended to help prisons figure out which inmates can spend extra days in halfway house, a completely different point unrelated to determining what inmates can shave off time off their good behavior. And that was my interpretation of it as well. But I think what we're seeing now is we're starting to see that there's flip-flop on both sides. They went back to a lot of the lawmakers that actually pushed for this bill, lobbied for this bill, and they've asked them to give their take on this, and a lot of them won't give an answer. A lot of them say, no comment. Why? Was there maybe really an underlining tone that they knew this wasn't going to be effective right away, and it sounded great in the moment? I think this was the fear when we see bills pass. We want to know if they're really going to make a difference, if it's going to help people. And I really do think this bill will help people in the long run. But there's a lot of people right now that are near release, and they would like to go home because this bill applies to them, but it hasn't become effective yet because now, due to a technicality from Congress, when they laid this out, they're saying that that it has to wait for the risk assessment tool, which is not what they said was going to happen. On the whole, how would you rate the First Step program, Dan? What's up, Robbie? I didn't even see you in the room there. On a whole, I mean, look, it's great, right? Because it's progress in a direction that we haven't seen in a while for prison reform. I think it was wasn't really what we were looking for. It doesn't really take care of the needs for, it does have some adjustments. And we actually just had a client that he was stuck with a minimum mandatory, and I'm waiting for him to give me permission to go into more details about his case. But he had a minimum mandatory, and because of the First Step Act, his attorney filed a motion, and the minimum mandatory was removed. And now he's very likely going to get a much reduced sentence because of that. So seeing things and hearing things like that, that does give us hope that this bill is going in the right direction. With all of our clients that we work with, whether we're helping them with letters, whether we're helping them prepare for the PSR interview, whether we're educating them on what the ins and out of RDAP actually look like, I think that it's important to understand that there's not going to be a magic wand that's just going to make everything better. This is going to be a slow, rolled out process. And I'm going to assume even 7-8 months from now, when this is actually in place, that there's still going to be issues. There's still going to be people that should be released that aren't released. So my theory on this now, if you're somebody in prison or you have a family member in prison, you're getting ready to go into prison, and you feel like these things should be applying to you. Now, obviously, if your good time hasn't been updated yet and you're nowhere near release, don't worry about it. It will get affected probably well before you're going to be released. However, if you have a family member that's in prison right now that this does affect, that technically would be home right now, or they would have been home, a couple of weeks ago, or maybe they'd be home in a couple of weeks from now, I would work on, if you have the ability to either hire your attorney, I would have a motion prepared and going to a judge in that district that can make those decisions to try to give him the time, because that's what we're also seeing with compassionate release. Before, people that were trying to do compassionate release, and did we post anything in here on that? I may have. No, I didn't put anything in here on compassionate release. Compassionate release is also part of the First Step Act. So elderly, sick individuals that you think should qualify, and you need to go in and read some of the stipulations to who qualifies for compassionate release. But prior to the First Step Act, compassionate release was completely controlled within the BOP. The BOP had first say and final say whether they were going to release somebody on compassionate release. Now, you have the ability to go to the court, to have a judge rule it, where the judge has the final say on whether or not a individual can be granted compassionate release. The catch is you have to make sure that all of your remedies have been exhausted through the BOP. So if you haven't gone through the BOP first, you haven't done your BPs and all your forms within the Bureau of Prisons, you can't just go to the court and ask the court to release your loved one or in that nature. You have to go through the BOP steps first. These are things that we like to help our clients prepare for, mitigate for, really take a stance on what it is they can be doing instead of just getting upset and screaming at somebody. That's really one of the issues, is people get so sensitive and they take it personal to the point where they start venting and they go outside of the facts. And that's why a lot of the stuff gets shut down, because just like when we read personal narratives, I just got one sent to me a few minutes ago that a client has some question, not a client, a prospect that sent a narrative over, wants us to review it. And the narrative it's just not good. It's basically begging and begging for sympathy. If you're not sticking to the facts and building your case around solid points, and you're just going down this emotional roller coaster of how it's not fair and your husband or loved one has been locked up in prison for way too long and they're in there for reasons that they shouldn't be in there for, you're getting off the whole point and topic. You need to kind of drill this down. I'm in the halfway house now waiting for my 54 days good time. How much halfway house time do you have, Pasquale? Just out of curiosity, because if you're waiting for the 54 days, if you have less than 6 or 7 months left to go in the halfway house, you're probably not going to see your 54 days good time bumped in time. You're probably going to, you got 9 months. Okay. So you will probably see it, but it's probably going to take another 6 months before you see it. How much time will the 50, like if the good time kicked in right now, Pasquale, how much would that change your sentence by? Like, what was your total sentence? Would you be added there right away? Good time estimated is September 3rd. Is that with, 70 days. So yeah, that's a nice chunk of change that you could knock off of your sentence. You'll knock some of it off. It's not going to be the full 70 days. If you've got 9 months, well, you might get it. You might make it just in time. So that's a huge benefit for you. Instead of serving the 9 months, you might serve another 6 months and, you'll be done. When are you eligible to go to home confinement? 120-month sentence. That's a long time. We had a client sentenced to how many years? 33 and a half. 33 and a half years that he was sentenced to. Hey, Jay, did you finish your sentence? Who's Jay? What can you do to get my 54 days? What can I do to get? You can have a motion filed, Pasquale, and there's no guarantee that would work. But motioning to the judge, a judge can overturn that to give you the good time, and that's what we're seeing. It's just getting the judge to read it in the right context. Home confinement is March 3rd. Yeah, feel free to give us a call or a text message, and if there's anything that we can do to help you out. Oh, gotcha. Okay, Jay, sorry. Hey, Jay, did you just finish your sentence? Yeah, he hasn't started his sentence yet. So the First Step Act, it's very confusing. There's all kinds of disqualifications. There's lists, there's pages and pages and pages of what disqualifies somebody from getting, good time credits. I'm not talking about the 54 days per year. I'm specifically talking about the good time credits that can extend your release to the pre-release phase of halfway house or home confinement. You have to realize that you're going to have to be patient here, guys. And I know for those of you that are right on the cusp that could really use these 54 days, people like are in this room right now sitting in halfway house just waiting for that to happen so they can try to go home as soon as possible. I know it's got to be stressful and it's got to be aggravating for the individuals that are sitting in prison right now, that if their 54 days were counted for, they would already be home. It's got to be kind of like sitting on pins and needles, just waiting every day. You're waiting, waiting, waiting. And be careful. There's going to be a lot of attorneys, a lot of consultants that are telling you they can qualify you for this, or they've got some magic potion that's going to make it happen. Guys, in a lot of the situations, you probably shouldn't be paying high-priced fees to attorneys to go file these motions. If you're very financially well off and it's not going to affect you and you want to take the risk, take the risk. If you're not in a situation like that, reach out to the federal defender's office, see what you can do, your public defenders, and see if there's anything that might be able to be done on your behalf. We have the ability to, we have some of our staff members that do have the ability to help prepare motions at a highly reduced cost. So if that is something that you really want to venture off into and you are willing to understand that there's absolutely no guarantee that any of that's going to work for you, as you saw right here, it's in the description of this video, another individual was shot down by a judge saying that that's not how she read it in the lingo. So it is open for interpretation to an extent right now. And are they going to go in and update it? Are they going to go in and make provisions on these directions? Or are they just going to wait for the risk assessment tool to be created? No way to know yet. There's so much unknown right now that this is where you see kind of the shit coming out of the woodwork. Meaning all of the crazy characters that are going to find a way to capitalize off of somebody's fear and inability to really think this through and think, well, if I just pay somebody to fix this because it sounds great, I'm going to do it. I'm not saying don't hire somebody and don't pay somebody. I'm saying do your homework and walk into this be very cautious with the understanding that it may not work and you're taking a risk. And for those of you that can't afford it, it's going to take place in a few months automatically. It will happen. It's just a matter of when. So my overall thoughts on the First Step Act are, this is pretty much what I expected. I expected to see a lot of possibility, but I also expected to see a lot of hiccups, speed bumps, ditches in the road, and a lot of frustration because it's so confusing. How many of you got online and Googled First Step Act looking for like just basic information that's spelled out? And it's really, you really have to dig to really find what you're looking for because there's so many different websites posting stuff. There's so many different individuals out there talking about it, including me. So I'm adding to the confusion. But we're really trying to simplify it and break it down. The reality is there's a good chance that the 54 days a year is not going to be effective until the risk assessment tool is done, which is about 6 months out. The 54 days a year is really the only thing that is supposed to be retroactive. So for those of you that have long sentences or friends or family that are already in prison right now, that are thinking they're programming and they're going to be taking the right programs, and once the risk assessment tool is done, they're going to get 10 to 15 days retroactive, is not going to happen. It's going to be from that point forward, guys. So I know that's what a lot of you don't want to hear because a lot of you are probably, we know rumors fly in prison. Rumors fly in the real world, but specifically in prison, rumors are just all over the place because you don't have a real way of checking sources, at least not in any type of a real-time manner. You're listening to an inmate, you get an email from an attorney or from a legal news group or from a friend, and they tell you this new law just passed and this is what it's supposed to do and you should be out of here in a week. And now you run around, you're telling everybody else in the prison system what you just heard. Before you know it, it spreads like wildfire and there's just all kinds of myths running around in the prison system. So we're trying to make it to where you guys are getting some accurate information, simplified. I know a lot of you are really focused on the 54 days a year and a lot of you are really focused on the 10 to 15 days per month pre-release work credits. That is going to happen. You just have to wait until the risk assessment tool is done, guys. 6 to 7 months. It's not going to be the end of the world. For those of you that have been down for a while, you know how fast that time goes. Such an important, informative channel. Thank you. Oh, awesome, Francie. I got to look closer to the screen. I'm going to need glasses soon. Turning 40. My beard's turning gray. Losing my hair.
You lost your hair before you turned 40.
That's true. It's true. Thanks, CJ. CJ reminded me I lost my hair before I turned 40. He is an asshole. That's okay. His birthday's coming up next week, guys. 41 years old. Fucking old man. Tasmarian, you got it. So really, guys, that's all I wanted to talk about today. I really also on our YouTube channel, we do have a channel on there, kind of like a where you can, what is it called? Where you have the my mind just went blank. I create a playlist. On the playlist on our channel, we do have one called Prison Reform. And this video will get added to the prison reform list. Next couple of weeks, we're going to have some really cool individuals on here that are experts on prison reform, specifically focused on First Step Act. So we're going to try to continue to bring you valuable information. If you found anything valuable in the content of this video today, do me a favor, guys. Post it in the comments of this video once the live stream is over. Share your information with others. If you have a story or you've gone through something or you have some information regarding the First Step Act that you'd like to share with the rest of us, best thing you can do is post it in the description and in the section on here where you can go in and type in. But don't do it on the chat because people, I don't know if they watch all of that, but they will read the comments in the bottom. Doing 85% is what the BOP takes off now. No, well, it's supposed to be. They're not really doing 85%. You were really doing closer to 87%, Tasmarian. It's supposed to be 85%. So the First Step Act just reiterated what the BOP was already supposed to be doing. So the 54 days a year is 85%. That's you serving 85%, getting 15% off. But what they were doing was 47 days, which was really like 13%, where you were serving like 87% of your time. So it's been updated, it's been corrected. We're waiting for the risk assessment tool to come out now so they can actually make it retroactive for all of these awesome people that need to get out of prison. Like CyberDoc said, please feel free to share your thoughts and opinions on the video. It's posted. Awesome. That's all we got, guys. I'm RDAP Dan, Federal Prison Time Consulting. Make sure if you haven't done so, like, subscribe, and share to my channel. You guys are awesome. I love every single one of you guys, and I will see you all next week. Have an amazing weekend. I'm out of here. Peace.